David Cage and Quantic Dream's latest title is the first to come close to achieving the studio's long-term goal of blending interactive and cinematic experiences. Compared to its two most recent predecessors, Detroit Become Human for the most part succeeds in telling an emotionally gripping story interspersed with meaningful choice and action. It does this with the help of the technological advancements and lessons learned between games, but also utilises the subject matter in ways that previous games could not. Certainly a different story could be told using this medium, but I don't think any could be as successful as one about androids.
Fucking androids.
The basic premise of artificial intelligence rising up to take on humanity is nothing new. It's incredibly well-trodden ground. This makes for a safe bet, as though the story constantly asks us whether or not we can care about androids, our history and media proves that we can. Popular cinema has proved this time and time again, and Quantic Dream has even proven this for itself when it released the Kara demo back in 2012 to much fan reaction and emotion. So how does a story featuring androids, while not shocking in any sense, manage to work so well in Quantic Dream's interactive formula? It's because it allows us to excuse so much of what could be jarring if it was about humans.
We shouldn't need that. Everybody's gotta die of something.
Detroit Become Human may be a marked improvement when it comes to both dialogue and performance, but even when it's not, I wasn't as bothered by the flaws. Of course they look a bit wooden sometimes, they're androids. Of course the dialogue can be cheesy, they're machines. If something seems too perfect or even fake in this world, it's easy to pass it off as being created by or simply viewed through the lens of an AI, which gives so many small things one hell of a free pass, often without me even realising it. The famous QuickTime event action scenes also feel more natural when you think of them as reactions interpreted by an artificial mind. For a human, pushing a button prompt can't really convey dodging an incoming blow, but somehow an android doing it almost makes sense. The meticulous nature in which these actions are carried out reads as more believable when it's being done by something that would be so inherently meticulous. Other conflicts in the game can be approached with a more step-by-step method, and then acted on once a solution is found. This is done by constructing a simulation of what could happen before initiating the sequence, which breaks up some of the QuickTime action and wouldn't make sense without some sort of computing involved. Even the detective-style mechanics are so much more logical when being calculated by a computer. Reconstructing a possible scene by noticing small items out of place is something I believe a computerized detective can do in this futuristic world. One of Quantic Dream's previous games, Heavy Rain, had a similar mechanic using AR sunglasses, but it always felt somehow far less realistic than this one. I don't question that these robots can scan an environment to find objects. I don't feel removed from the immersion by seeing hints or descriptions. It makes sense, and having them easily on hand makes playing through a much more intuitive experience.
Holy shit!
Having the story centered around androids also meant that when I didn't completely connect with the characters, I felt there was a good reason for it. While I empathized with their causes or desires, I didn't particularly like Marcus or Kara. They seemed so bland without much personality beyond their goals. Marcus is such a blank slate to cater to the player's potential disparity for choices, and Kara is totally defined by wanting to protect Alice. Marcus even has a shoehorned romance, which seems totally out of place. Had they been human, I could have seen them as boring and underdeveloped. Instead, the lack of personality was fine, because I knew they were only just discovering what personality really meant, still forming their ideals, values, and beliefs. The character I liked the most though, Connor, on the other hand felt deliberately perfect, which again wouldn't have made much sense if he was human. His appearance is clean-cut and youthful, and somehow encourages trust, just what you'd want from an investigative android. His voice is the real clincher.
Anybody home?
It rings with a sort of purity and optimism, even when he's not.
Both my appearance and voice were specifically designed to facilitate my integration.
Well, they fucked up.
He feels more human than the other two, and as an advanced prototype for a specific role, this is all easily believable. I was also more invested in his relationships with his buddy cop pal. I cared about whether or not he liked me, whereas in the other characters it didn't bother me as much.
We should forget what happened and start over. What do you say?
There's a lot of talk about how much the choices matter in Detroit, and the multiple endings or resolutions you can come to. I can't tell if maybe I'm made of sheer luck, but it seemed almost everything I did was the right decision, or I managed to rectify that mistake later. I wavered on my path mentally, but stuck to it and came up with an ending which felt right for my actions and choices. There were plot holes, confusing decisions, on-the-nose metaphors, and even things that just felt pointless, but when it all came to a close, my story felt like it was the only way it could have gone down, even though I know it's not the case. In Detroit Become Human, you can't expect anything new from the questions that are asked.
Could our machines now be turning against us?
Have androids become a threat to our security?
It's old ground to wonder if machines can have free will, choices, desires, or even souls, but you can enjoy the way it asks them. Finally, Quantic Dream deliver on a compelling and immersive experience in their own specific style, but I don't know how they're going to make it work next time without the android crutch.
Fuck you and your fucking assessment!